for people about where you stand and what your commitment is. And the next speaker has shown undying commitment to the cause for peace and the cause for justice for the Palestinian people. She's a former councillor of Birmingham, an NHS worker, and she's here today as the patron of Stop the War, with whom she's worked consistently for the last 20 years. Please welcome Salma Yaqoob.
The current #1 song in Israeli music charts, should you care to know about it, is set over a military drill beat. It calls for genocide against Palestinians, calling them rats and sons of Amalek, and calls for the Israeli military to kill, I quote, terrorists Bella Hadid, Dua Lipa and Mia Khalifa. This song encapsulates and exposes the two fronts of Israel's war. The military war against Palestinians to erase them physically in the Middle East, and the propaganda war to dehumanize and erase Palestinians and their sympathizers from public discourse everywhere. And the two are equally important, as the Israeli military assaults would not be able to take place without the backing of Western countries, on which Israel is completely reliant. All those physical bombs being dropped in Gaza and the F-16s dropping them were paid for by billions of dollars and pounds of Western taxpayers' money. Western taxpayers who are feeling the cost of living crisis, millions of whom can't afford to feed their families, many of whom are facing homelessness, and yet our government can continue to fund Israel's violence and ongoing dispossession of Palestinians. And for this to take place, Western masses need to be kept ignorant of the realities, or have those realities distorted so that the violence of the oppressor is depicted as justified. Hence the importance of the propaganda war I alluded to at the beginning. Because most people have an instinct for humanity and justice, and would be sympathetic to the plight of Palestinians if they knew the truth. Collective public ignorance as to the 75-year dispossession of Palestinians, the decades of brutal occupation, has therefore been cultivated by a compliant media and a political class who maintain and enforce a pro-Israel stance as the default, such that questioning is seen as radical or extreme. And the absence of vital context is deliberately erased. Palestinians apparently are the aggressors, not the dispossessed victims. Powerful Israel is depicted as a vulnerable victim, despite decades of documented state violence and apartheid, which it has carried out with impunity, given cover and backing by its imperial handler, the United States. And we've heard already how we know this is an imperialist endeavour. This is about Israel playing its role in the whole imperial architecture. And so the atrocities of October 7th, where Israelis were killed and hostages were taken by Hamas, including many civilians, is depicted as Act 1, not just another tragic chapter in a litany of oppression. And it's considered political blasphemy to acknowledge the desperate and unbearable conditions of the Palestinians and make reference to this historic context. And yet, my humanity demands that I condemn any atrocity condemned by anyone when it comes to civilians. And that's why I call for all hostages to be released, whether in Gaza or in Israeli prisons. And it is basic humanity and empathy which is missing. I can't tell you the sleepless nights I've had, not just looking at the output, because we can all see it now on social media, of babies, of children, of families blown apart, devastated. But the cheering on and the justification and the sheer joy even and the brazen arrogance right from the top to so-called ordinary civilians. And I think this is what is really unmasking the reality of what colonialism and imperialism is. And I want to spend the few minutes I have to talk about not just the architecture, but the process by which this happens. It's important for us as political activists to make those connections. This is about imperial power, but imperial power is able to exert its brutality through racism. And it so happens that the Palestinian cause has been misrepresented as some kind of religious endeavour, as an endeavour of those extreme fanatical Muslims against the civilised, westernised, humane people of Israel. And it's deliberate. And this Islamophobia that underlies it erases the fact that Arabs are actually Christian and Muslims. Churches are being bombed just as mosques are. But that's an inconvenient truth, because it suits those in power to depict Palestinians as unreasonable fanatics, beholden to an unreasonable religion. And that's why the demonisation of Muslims and Islam is critical. The irony, of course, being that I can tell you as a Muslim, Islam and Judaism are closer than any of the faiths. We both believe in one God, and we both believe that Moses is one of the greatest prophets. But let's put those truths to one side when it comes to the politics of Israel and what it does and the cover that it has. Because that propaganda war actually brings tension and the lack of freedom of speech right here. In the name of democracy, what they're doing is killing democracy. In the name of humanity and defending civilization, they are killing, literally, children. And all of this because of the fears of Muslims that have been very, very cynically built over many decades. This is not new, and I can say this as a Muslim. We experienced what we experienced after 9/11, and this is far worse. You know, many of us became politicised at that time, but the brazenness of what is happening now is unprecedented. And that's why it's important that our movement has rallies like this, has those protests on the streets, and when it comes onto the ballot box. Because it's absolutely true that the politicians, all they care about, ultimately, is getting their bums on those seats in Parliament or in the Senate. And this year will be an election year. And we've seen already the chilling silencing of the Palestinian cause in the Labour Party, as well as our institutions across the board, whether it's universities or workplaces. I know I have to think 10 times before I speak up, but I will not let my conscience be put to one side when it comes to speaking up. But I know people have lost their jobs, lost their livelihoods. We know celebrities even are being targeted to give that very clear message: do not stand in solidarity. So whatever power that we have, because we are many, the leaders are few, we've seen those huge mobilisations around the world. The majority of people on this planet do not endorse, do not stand by, do not condone the killing of the people of Gaza and the eradication of the people of the Palestinian people. But those in power, who have power, let's not, this is the reality, they are relying on us being silenced now. That's the last weapon they have. So we must keep coming out, we must keep protesting, we must keep organising, and must give a very, very clear message when it comes to voting, whether it's our council elections or the general election, that our vote will not be taken for granted, and we will not be voting for any person who has either abstained on a ceasefire or decided to condone openly the Israeli killing and the genocide that is taking place against Palestinian people.
Thank you, Salma. Really good to hear you speaking here today. An important reminder.